Hello, everyone. Some brief technical difficulties, but we are here now in this room, and we are joined with Jess and Iskra. So, to let you guys know a little bit about who these ladies are while we and our friends get in here. Iskra is a mom who disrupted the fashion industry with her unretouched images and her fight for greater inclusion. And so she works with the National Eating Disorder Association and numerous mental health initiatives to encourage wellness from the inside out. And she's just an incredible woman who I have really enjoyed getting to know and have become such a fan of. And her next mission is to help more people gain financial independence and knowledge around investing to create generational wealth. So that is Iskra. She's here with us now. And
Yay!
yay, hey Iskra.
Yay! I'm like, when do I come in? I'm here.
Now you come in.
So excited.
And Iskra and I have a common friend in Jess, who I met actually when I was a teenager and have just really admired. So Jess is a cultural expert and a creative. She works with the world's biggest brands like Dove and Barbie just to help them become more inclusive. And she now has created these life courses and these workshops to share some of her gorgeous wisdom. And these courses are actually accessible to all of us now. And they're called The Good Life. And I help you focus on the vision and the values that drive your life. So that is Jess.
Yay!
Yay. And so we are going to have a conversation between the three of us talking about identity, about womanhood, and the ways that we have been finding to build a life that we love. So before we really get into it, I am seeing so many people joining us. What's up, you guys? I'm seeing your hearts and your thumbs up. So yeah, if you just want to grab this and share this with your people, the link might have changed. So as much as you guys want to share, and we're seeing your thumbs up and your heart. So keep those going. We can keep this as a conversation.
Yes.
Thank
you everyone for joining us today. This is so exciting. This is my first audio room, and I was so happy when Debbie and then I heard Jess was on this too. So I'm imagining we're all in a big physical room, but the fact that we have this like virtual room possible is so exciting. So thank you, Facebook.
Yeah, thanks, Facebook. Yeah, I'm so
it.
glad you guys got to join us. So, I mean, I think that this pairing is so nice. Ever since I met Iskra, who I met after I sort of got to know Jess a little bit, I've been really excited about the ways in which the three of us intersect and can have a conversation. So to do this with people is so exciting. You guys are just two of the loveliest women I know, and I fell in love at first sight with both of you in such different times and places in my life, and just feel like I've held you so dearly as two women that I root for and that I learn from, and I feel encouraged that the world is growing with you guys' voices in it. The work that you do is incredible, and I feel such a fondness towards you. I think you're both really lovely, and I wanted to ask you guys, in your opinion, what do you think is the loveliest quality in someone?
Well, can I just say, like, we love you back. I know I can speak for Iskra on that. And there's something about when we met at the age and stage of your life that you were at, and it's just it kind of speaks to what I find most lovely, which is vulnerability with people. I think, we live in such a fast-paced world. We tend to talk so much about our lives in the online space. We kind of show and not always tell. And so I feel really blessed when somebody is like courageous enough, Debbie, to feel vulnerable, to share where they're at in their moment in their life, to risk feeling maybe ashamed of something, because we have so many sometimes negative voices in our head, and we carry a lot of baggage sometimes. So vulnerability for me is like such a lovely quality, and because I understand how much risk it takes to be vulnerable. And I feel like that's where you and I feel like also really connected when we met, was this rich and sweet vulnerability where that builds trust over time too. So I think for me, vulnerability is a deeply lovely quality, and you've got it and then some.
Wow, I love that. Same.
Yeah, that's such a powerful quality. I think the loveliest quality for me is empathy. I feel like anytime I feel like I've been hurt, it's when someone hasn't been, considerate or caring of my feelings. And I feel like when you do have that empathy, and I know we touched on that a little bit earlier, Debbie, talking about how when you see different parts of the world, when you experience different cultures, when you take the time to kind of come out of your bubble, especially if you're someone like me who is white, who is very privileged, to come out of that bubble of kind of understanding what other people might be going through. It not only gives you that perspective, but it gives you more empathy for what people are going through. And then I just feel like your heart is more open to trying to help them, or at least do things that aren't going to hurt others.
I love that. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that those are two, vulnerability and empathy. And I do think they go hand in hand. It really comes back to openness, right? It comes back to knowing that we all have our own experiences in the world, and there is such a courage and a bravery in understanding how we connect with other people and understanding our perspective and how it's not always universal. And the more that we seek to understand other people's, the better we can not only understand ourselves, but create a world that feels safe for our neighbors. And then in that, it just creates a world that we all get to enjoy more. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in terms of enjoying your life, I know a lot of the people in this room who, I'm seeing some of these names that I recognize, and some of these people are younger women, and I know, and people of course of just all gender identities and all ages. There's this conversation surrounding growing up with this mindset of working a 9 to 5 at a desk, and how maybe that's like a failure because we can all be the architects of an entrepreneurial life. And something that I see be such a trap to people is feeling that, if you are working at a desk, or if you're not your own boss, if you're doing something a little bit more traditional, or if you have a job and not a career path, that people find a sense of shame around that. And I am really blessed because I found what I love to do at a young age, and I found a way to continue to do that and evolve in that. But I know for a lot of my friends and a lot of the fans, some of the things that they're writing in about and speaking about is it's about identity. It's about sort of excellence and that dream gap. And you guys have done such a great job at carving out your corner of the sky. Jess, I know that in your courses, you've been speaking on success and how to quantify that, and how to set yourself up for happiness and fulfillment in the pursuit of success. And I guess the big question I have for both of you is how do you figure out who you are as a woman coming up in the world, as a person who comes up in the world, and what you want? And maybe you think you're too far into your life, and you don't even maybe know what your dream is yet. How do you find who you are and what you want?
Ooh. I feel like I can't wait to hear your answer for this, Jess.
Same.
Well, it has been a pool I've been swimming in a lot lately. Here's what I would say. I would say that I think the greatest job we're ever going to have is actually the job of learning about who we are. And that is a lifelong pursuit. You're a lifelong learner of yourself. And I would maybe reframe the model of success a little differently, because I think you're right, Debbie, that we get programmed pretty young. And I'm sure Iskra's even thinking about this with a new baby. It's like, even when we're little, everybody's like, oh, you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be an artist. Look at her. She's such a little dancer. And it's met with such good intention, because we're obviously trying to imagine, a path for this person in the world. But I think a lot of us, depending on our religions and families and cultures and upbringings, so many of us can get programmed with that idea of success. So especially if you're a woman and you've been raised in a more traditional societal structure, it's like, you're a woman when, you get married, or somebody loves you, or you're physically beautiful to other people, or, you're successful, or you're a boss babe and you have to make $1 bazillion. Like, we keep layering in all of these visions of success, which I think can be inspiring, but also they can be limiting if we don't learn a technique to challenge them a bit. And, whether you grew up as a student athlete and then decide to go in a different direction, or a young actor, or, whatever we start off doing, I feel like we can get rewarded by those labels. And so success can feel like it's only about the title, or your relationship in the world, or the money in the bank. And you're right. In my Good Life classes, we've been talking a lot about understanding our vision and our values, and letting that drive, what's your 30,000 foot view of your life, and what are the values that you hold most dear, and letting those kind of guide you to what you want to be in the world, not even what you want to do. Because I think what we do is a function of who we are. And if we're not connected to who we are, we're not at least searching and giving ourselves grace and space and permission to experiment a bit, sometimes people don't find passion by the time they're 20 or 18 or 38 or 58. Like,
right.
We're on this journey of figuring ourselves out. So I think a big part is understanding what your vision is, knowing that that vision can change, understanding what you hold most dear, which are your values, which you started off by asking Iskra and I, like, what do we find most lovely is, and I think some of that becomes guideposts. I think our lives are meant to be guideposts, not just goalposts.
Wow.
Oh, see?
Legend.
Right? I just try to absorb everything Jess has to offer.
I feel the same. Yeah, I love that as like guideposts and not goalposts. I think it can really be easy. I think especially as women to quantify our successes or our milestones as the sort of big ones that we see and that we know, and whether that's a graduation or a relationship or a next season of life, motherhood. I think that the conversation around those things, Iskra, I don't know if you wanted to speak into that at all, but that the idea of how to find your vision and your value, I think we have evolved so much, and you've done that with such grace and tact. And I know we've sort of spoken about that and how that relates to being a mom.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, I'm trying to add to what Jess said about this, because I think one thing I've found with the definition of success and understanding that and being in this new season of my life as a new mom is when I have quieted every outside voice, and honestly the internal ones too, right? The little voices of self-doubt or the little questions that you have, the ways that you can kind of like honestly target yourself. When I try and quieten that and I really just sit with myself, which I don't think many of us do enough, and I definitely try and make purposeful, intentional offline time, and also just no devices, right? No TV, not even my partner, like really just, can I sit with myself and just be still for a second and really just contemplate? And for me, that has felt very different at different points in my life. At times when I've done that kind of, I mean, some people would class it as a meditation, right? There have been times in my life where I've wanted to rush it, when I've literally been twiddling my fingers and just kind of waiting for it to be over because I'm almost uncomfortable in that space. And I've gotten to this place, and I think having a child really just, in one way, you've got like this superhero cape on and you're running around trying to do 10,000 things, but it also just slows you down and makes you very, very present and very, very aware of these little things and these little moments. And it enables you to refine that joy and refine, in my opinion, that success of what is life.
Yeah.
But it's just feeling joy. It's being completely present. It's not wondering, what should I be doing right now? Or what does this person think of me? Or all those shoulds. I really definitely try and quieten out the word should, because that's definitely something, as a perfectionist, as someone who has liked to be a people pleaser my life and has wondered, how do I kind of attain something that will make my parents proud?
Right.
Or, how can I pay them back for all they've invested in me and their energy and time and love? So for me, quietening everything and sitting with myself and being still, that's when I'm like, okay, success feels like being present. Success feels like when I just laugh so hard my belly hurts and I nearly pee myself. All of those things make it harder and easier for me to understand where I'm at on this journey. And like you said, success is definitely not a finish line, and you can have it and feel like I've achieved this, and you can have one of those big moments that's super epic. One of the biggest highlights for me, honestly, in my whole life to this day, has not only been bringing my child into this world, but through social media, I gave away $20,000, and it helped 2 women, both who are going through infertility journeys, have babies of their own. And I've never cried or felt kind of so proud. And to me, that was one of my greatest achievements. So you also never know when success is going to happen or what it's going to look like. And, it's important to always, always find those proud moments, how big, how small, and cherish that, because we're doing our best. That's definitely something we have to be gentle with ourselves. There's so many comparisons out there. So making sure you strip back the shoulds, strip back the being online too much and comparing yourself, and just really sit with where you're at. That's what I would say.
That's so huge. That's so wise. Yeah. And something that I heard you say was an emphasis on joy and creating space for joy. And it wasn't just like, acknowledging it when it comes, but also really holding space for that. And I think when you do listen to yourself and you take time to quiet those voices and those external factors, and like you said, comparison, which has been described as the thief of joy. Like, it's so interesting. I think that that's like really powerful.
You know what I love too, Debbie, about what you were just saying is you used a feeling term instead of a visual term, right? So it wasn't success looked like, it was like success felt like. And I advocate for that a lot when you're trying to figure out what really matters to you in the world, is think about when you feel the most lit up in your life, right? Because sometimes we achieve the big, things we think we're supposed to achieve. And a lot of people will say, oh, it felt kind of empty, right? Like I got there and it didn't feel. And so I like using feeling as that kind of helping you in the guidepost. And the other thing that I really loved that I'll just put a language around, which is I call them dominant stories. That's the like all the shoulds in your head, the dominant story. I'm worth this, I'm not worth that, or people are going to think I'm a fraud. The dominant stories can guide us to look at success in a different way. And when you talk about being still, I call it listening to the whispers, because I think so much knowledge comes up when we're quiet and we can still ourselves. And the listening to the whispers really can tell you like what matters to you most. And then when people know what matters them most, man, you always feel successful, truthfully. It's not as much of a quest as we sometimes make it in the world.
Yeah, I think that's so huge. And understanding that it is about sort of a perspective and a mindset of reflection, and knowing that sometimes we've already achieved what a year ago, or starting a project, or a little girl version of myself thought was success. And in pursuit of the next success, I haven't even identified that, like, wow, I did that. I checked that box, and I think that feels really nice and can be so important to create that space. And I know we've talked a lot about evolution, and I think that as we evolve and grow as people, I think that that's such an important conversation, because how can you know what the next thing is, and how can you really give truth to that and hold value for that if you haven't first acknowledged like what you have done, what you are doing, and then the values in your mind of where that's shaping you and the vision. I know, Jess, earlier we were speaking and you had a question for me, which I would love to get into.
Yeah, well, and actually it's so perfect, this segue, because what I was curious about, and I thought maybe people listening might want to explore with us too, is let's say you've reached a certain level of success in your life, right? Like, let's say you, people know you as that athlete or performer, or, I'm curious about like all of us. I mean, we all live our lives out loud on social, right? I mean, whether we have 2 followers or 2 million followers, like we have a community of people who watch us now in a lot of ways, right? And I was curious for you, Debbie, as like a public figure, and first and foremost a human being, but as like somebody who people are watching, how do you relate to the evolution in your life? Like when you want to change your mind about something, or go in a different direction, or maybe lose a label that might have been given to you in the past, maybe even one that you've owned, but you want to expand, you want to grow, and people are watching. I wanted to play around with the idea of how do you evolve when people have gotten comfortable putting you in a certain box? Like maybe, how do you handle that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think that, it's interesting, because as much as we can be sort of aware of perception, and we can be aware, to your point, we're all sort of very visible in this generation. We're all doing things in a way, whether it's the other people in your school, whether it's people online, whether it's your family, people are seeing us as we're changing. But when we put something out there and the photo lives on Instagram of us having this hobby or this style or this, mindset and, political opinion or whatever, that it seems as though there's such a finality for it because the context of that existing in that moment and being born out of that moment of your life, it doesn't hold to that context. It sort of exists in this timeless ether where it stays very present, and it can be really daunting. Will they even accept it if I grow and change and shift in this way? And I would say the first thing is to remind ourselves, and also to condition, maybe is not the right word, but to prepare people to know that we are all allowed to evolve, and it actually should be celebrated that we can think something. And then with all of our experiences, you're not doing it right if all of your experiences aren't affecting the way that you're thinking about things. Obviously, I think our beliefs and our core sort of foundational things, those are really important to stick to and to allow you to guide. And I think that it does emphasize the importance of vision and your value system. And then knowing, like, I started out as an actor in comedy, and I also throughout that discovered how fun it can be to direct and produce. And that doesn't mean that I am not still in love with acting. That also doesn't mean that who I was as an actor is no longer true. That will always have been true. And also, like, creating space for me to know that each thing informs each thing, and that as a director and as a producer, those things are so informed by what I have learned growing up as an actor. And so to know that, things aren't mutually exclusive and they can all inform other people. And I am a friend and a daughter, and I'm also a wife, and I'm also, I think that public evolution, it's first about knowing that you are allowed to grow and change. You are encouraged to grow and change. And also then I think it's helpful for us to expect it from the people around us. The biggest thing is some of my best friends live so far away, and it can be easy for me when I reach out to them to just remember them as who they were last time we spoke, and not sort of ask those questions that when you do life with people day to day, like, oh, this might be maybe they used to love this type of coffee, but now they don't, or love this sort of thing. It's easy to see those little changes when you're around someone. But I think it's really important for us to remember that if we are changing and evolving every day, so is everyone else. And as close as you can be to someone, or as much as you can see someone visibly and publicly and think a type of way about them, that there is always room for that to sort of be shaped. And every time you interact with someone or see someone, they will have lived experience and since you've seen them last, and that might inform ways in which they've shifted. And it can be about just celebrating the beauty of those shifts and holding space for them.
I love that so much. It makes me now, when I talk to people, instead of saying like, how are you? I want to ask them, who are you now?
Wow.
Wouldn't that be a great question if we haven't talked in a while, instead of being like, how are you? Which I find so hard to answer. Someone's like, who are you now?
Yeah. That's so great. Yeah. What are you about? What are you into?
Yeah.
Like what has changed? What are you discovering? Yeah. That's so great. Yeah. Identity is so funny. And I have only ever lived the life that I have lived. But I find it so interesting and wonderful to do life with other people. I know Iskra, the night that I met you, so it's not like we had like a whole relationship up till this moment, but the night that I met you, you shared that you were pregnant, and I cried. I was so happy, and I was so curious to see like how you were going to navigate that. And I have only been so impressed watching you navigate that journey with grace and with honesty and a sense of playfulness and joy and a commitment to learning and seemingly really educating yourself on how to set yourself up, how to set your partner up, how to set your baby up for success. And I guess I want to hear from you. What do you want people to know about motherhood and how that relates to your identity, both as a woman, but also as a person and as a businesswoman, and all of that in the midst of it?
Oh my goodness, there is just so much. But yeah, I remember that night like it was yesterday, and it's crazy how time flies. But we were just hugging and sobbing, and we just met. But we knew each other just in spirit for a very long time.
Yes.
But no, it's, I guess, one of my biggest learning gosh, curves moments, was that I had so many expectations of what motherhood would look like. And I say look, right, because like we said earlier, our expectations and seemingly the times where we feel like we're failing or struggling or are at loss for something, it's usually when it's something we're trying to achieve, not like a feeling. So I'm imagining that, you know, I'll birth this child, and like the birth's going to be the hardest part. I feel like all my energy was focused on the fact I was having this home birth, unmedicated. It was going to be stupidly painful, which I hate to say, it was the most painful thing in the world. It really is excruciating, but it's over. And then immediately you have this tiny little human, and they need you, and they need you 24/7. There is no pausing. There is no moment to even catch a breath. And I think I wish I'd have had more of a realistic expectation of what that would look like. Obviously, I knew what I was getting myself into, and me and my partner talked and talked and talked, and I read the books, and, you know, I asked a few friends for advice, but it's not really till you're in the thick of it that your body, as it's healing from giving birth, and also the feeling of kind of losing this like little special bond you have that only you have, you kind of have this 9 months where it's just you and the baby, and you, I don't know, it feels very intimate and private almost, and then all of a sudden your baby's out here and other people get to hold them, and you kind of need people to hold them because you need to go and sleep. But there was just this, there's this sense of, okay, suddenly I felt in the dark about everything. I felt like I was failing because my baby was screaming and crying nonstop. I felt like breastfeeding was much harder than I ever imagined. I thought it was just the natural thing that you just do. And there's definitely a lot of learning around that, the different ways, the different timings, the burping, the types of milk that you might be producing. Are you producing enough? Like your diet, are you sleeping enough? What nutrients are you getting in? And even just the communication forms. I told Debbie, one of the biggest, I'm really grateful we did this, but I said to my partner before, I know I'm a perfectionist. I know as an only child, I've never really had to consider other people's ways of doing things. And unfortunately, in previous relationships, I've been highly aware, and even friendships too, that I am judgmental of other people's methods if I don't feel like they're as successful or efficient or effective as mine. And that's just this Virgo perfection thing that I have. And I said to Philip, I'm really worried because I do not want to push you away, and I do not want to make you feel like you aren't doing everything perfectly as you want to father, because I have this unrealistic perfectionist ideal of what is meant to happen. So I said to him, please give me grace as I work through this. I will do my best when you're, again, also learning. Neither of us have changed a nappy of a brand new baby. So if I watch you and maybe you're doing it slower, or maybe you've got poop over here, or maybe you're just not doing it the way I think you should, I have to quieten that, because I need you to feel like you can step up and do it. And I don't. So there was like, you're talking multiple things, and then there's yourself, right? Because you're used to getting up, eating breakfast when you want, then checking your emails, or like working on a project, or checking in with friends, or just feeling like in total control of your life. And literally overnight, that has completely changed. You are not in control of your life. Your baby is in control of your life, your partner's life, the whole household, everything. So you just have to learn in so many layers. And I think mental health, and, you know, finally women are really not feeling ashamed to speak up about postpartum, because I can easily see how that happens. And if I didn't have a partner that I could cry to, that I could vent to, that I could say, I just can't right now, I need to go into the shower and just sob. And it's not because I'm unhappy, because I'm so filled with joy and love, and my baby is just more than I could ever dream of, and I feel so grateful. But just this is so effing hard sometimes, and I just need to remember who I am and that I've got this. And if that means 5 minutes with the door closed to just cry a second and release just all these feelings and all this confusion, then I need you to support that. And luckily I did have a partner that helped me through all of that, and I did find my mom tribe I definitely distanced myself from a lot of friends because they just didn't understand, and I just couldn't be there for them the way I used to. I couldn't show up in nearly all of my relationships the way I used to, because my number one priority was my baby, and then number two was keeping my relationship with my partner strong, and then number three was just keeping myself, alive and not this sleep deprived, hungry, crazy person. So there's a lot, and I don't want to intimidate anyone. And I'm so grateful you said I did this with grace, because it definitely felt messy as hell. And I definitely tried to share all of those moments because I felt like I lacked that realistic version. And of course, that's the thing, right? Everyone has a different experience, and everyone's experience of motherhood is 100% different, because I've had friends have babies at the same time, and their babies love to sleep, and their babies love to breastfeed for 40 minutes. And I had a baby that could probably do 2 minutes and then got bored, and then I had to try and breastfeed again. And it's just so unique, that you really have to give that kind of time for yourself to just figure it out, because you will, and you are the perfect mother, father, raiser of your child. That's who your baby needs, and you're there. So that's really what I would say. But it's the best thing in the world. I'm very grateful.
I think that's so powerful to be able to share that. I know so many people who have gone into it not knowing what to expect, or even worse, thinking that the sort of idealized version on social media of people with really cute matching outfits with their babies having like a happy, peaceful, beautiful year, like that is what people can expect. And then it can really, I think, further these feelings of not enoughness, or am I failing, or why is this so hard for me when it seems so easy for other people? And the biggest thing that I've seen sort of, and that I'm hearing from you, is that there are so many nuanced things, and it's such a complicated thing to navigate, and it is so personal, and that it's okay if it seems overwhelming and daunting, and finding and maintaining yourself and the value of your feelings and experiences and identity in the midst of those priorities shifting, and having to be so informed by keeping this baby alive, and then wanting to make sure that your co-parent your relationship with them is really good, and that you're not feeling sort of lonely in that. And I'm glad that you spoke on that sort of shift in your relationship with the baby once the intimacy of carrying the baby, if you biologically have a child, like that's such an interesting thing to consider.
Yeah, I want to also bring up, because I do want to ask you a question, Debbie, but I do want to bring up the conversation that I've had with Jess before about the fact that you are one of the only people that I've been really grateful to have a conversation where you were more confident in understanding where you stand with not wanting to have children, or maybe that changing at any point. And I think that that's again just a really unheard conversation that women should and men should be allowed to have, because it is this expectation. And so Jess, if you want to speak to that, because that was really enlightening when
I'm so happy. Well, thank you first of all for inviting that part of the convo in, because I love you so much, and I'm listening to this, and I think you did such a beautiful service for people who either are already parents or thinking of becoming parents, in sharing vulnerably that process. And I've shared this with Iskra, privately, and Debbie as well, but I'm also I think when we talk about identity for women, and we talk about, or in people, I think you're right. It's all about choices, and what choices feel best for the life you want to create. And for me, I've been, I've known probably since I was younger in life that being a biological mom was not something that was interesting to me. It wasn't something I thought about, but I felt like I should, because that's what girls do, and that's what women want. And then as I grew up over time, I feel like, look, let's be honest, if you're a woman mostly of childbearing age and you're not married yet, we're all trying not to become pregnant. And so I spent most of my sex life really trying to not get knocked up. And then but I feel like this level of nuanced conversation is important to say that you can become a mother. You can be a mother in so many ways too in life, right? I am a global parent with my partner. We have girls organizations around the world that we spend time supporting and building. We have nieces and nephews we love. We know that our design of this life does not include having children of our own, but of being available and accessible to Iskra's child. So we can hold them while Iskra's napping. And I feel like I call it like, I mean, Rachel Cargill is beautifully calls it rich auntie supreme. You know, I call it the Oprah effect. I feel like everyone needs a good auntie. And I think that, and I love the idea that we can take the Band-Aid off of that a bit and talk about, you're no less of a woman if you don't want to have a child, or you're no more of a woman if you do. But like, how do you design a life you love and hold space for the vulnerability of choice for people? And look, by the way, in my life with my husband, we say to each other all the time, are we sure about this? We always check in. How are you feeling now? Like, because it's a journey around that identity, Debbie, like you were talking about. Like, I didn't want to get so stuck in my view that I wouldn't explore it. So curiosity was important, but for lots of people listening, this may not be their life path, and we can hold space wide open enough for everybody to choose a way to express themselves that feels really good. And you're right, it is still the third rail for women to say, I don't want to have kids, because most people will think, well, what, you don't like kids? No, I love them, but I also love me. And I know I'm going to do a better version of me with this choice.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I think that that's like a conversation that, Jess, I've loved having with you, which is, you know, womanhood and the things that people project onto that in terms of that association. And that if you check this box, or if you shift and turn in this way, that this then makes you more of a woman, or this makes you less of a woman. And I think especially on the fact that, you know, sort of our bodies are designed to be able to do this thing. And it is incredible and impressive if we want to do that. And to also know that our personalities and our souls are equally created in such a way to hold space, to nurture, to allow things to grow. And that does not always look like the sort of one, you know, publicly talked about, you know, most physical manifestation of that people sort of see. But there's so many ways that that can apply to our relationships with ourselves, with the people around us, with mentees, with like, you know, charities and our friends. And I think that, and also just timelines that, you know, if all of your friends are doing it now, and maybe you know that you do or don't want it, but you're not sure, not feeling pressure that just because everyone around you is entering into this season now, that you should either feel rushed to make up your mind, or that you should change your timeline or change your desires. But sort of getting back to what we were talking about earlier is really listening to yourself and your identity, your values and your vision, and what that looks like. And if it looks like motherhood, if it looks like being an auntie, you know, whatever that version is, that it doesn't make you more or less of a woman. And it's interesting to talk with both of you guys about how identity and motherhood are so easily lumped together for women, and how they actually are so informed by being two completely whole, separate things that can only highlight each other in different ways, but certainly are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think every time you make those decisions that have come from an outside expectation, it takes you further away from who you're meant to be, you know, that true identity, because you're essentially in your car, but someone else is at the wheel driving. So it's really important that we take that wheel, and regardless of what the passengers are saying we should be doing, we just have to stay in tune. And it's really hard. Like you said, as women, we have, since as young as you can imagine, we've seen the Disney princesses, and we've seen what our lives are meant to look like and what we're meant to look like physically as well, of course. You know, me and Debbie have both spoken very openly about, you know, going through an eating disorder and talking about body dysmorphia. And what's really interesting is figuring out how, because my child is a boy, and I'm navigating, and I'm really excited about it actually, because I know that if this had been even just the previous generation, there would be less discussions about fluidity and non-binary. And so I'm trying to do my best to learn and just be open to all of those conversations, because we're at a time where my child will be able to hopefully have a lot more freedom and choice of who they want to be, and figuring out, you know, what those pronouns will look like. That won't be down to me. That will be down to my child. So there's so many new things in motherhood, I believe, that are happening right now and shifting. And a lot of those conversations are very much, you know, I feel like there's some people I could definitely talk to, and sometimes online I feel really confident about sharing these things. And there's other times where, you know, I know they become very shameful, or people I think are just so scared of the unknown, and there's so much fear surrounding kind of this shift towards the freedom of choice. It's such a huge conversation that identity is becoming, and it should be really exciting, because we know that there have been so many people trapped in identities and trapped in these expectations of their gender or their sex, and now they get to choose and be who they've always wanted to be. And I think that that's just a beautiful, exciting time for everyone. So as I navigate motherhood, I'm trying to figure out, you know, I want to let my child figure out who they are. And I think that means I have to learn a lot of the things that society and my parents have been incredible. So I know they've done the best job. But now society already put those restrictions, or certainly made me believe certain things of how I navigated, you know, becoming a woman. And so trying to unlearn all those expectations so that when I raise my child, because you just catch yourself doing things, right? Being drawn to like, oh, well, my son's been born as a boy, so it's dump trucks and this and that. And like not trying to just trying to be open to everything, and like letting them wear pink, if you know, like it's just it's just silly little things. But there's so many steps we can take to just being kind of more open-minded and accepting. And I'm very lucky, and I make it purposeful to go out and follow people who are non-binary or who have transitioned, and understanding their journey, so that if that happens future, I can just be really understanding and accepting. So yeah, it's an exciting time. I don't know how I got onto that conversation, but we're talking about identity, and I just think it's really important as a parent to not be afraid that times are changing. Just be excited, and it is something we're going to have to learn and understand better, but it's a really beautiful time.
I think so too. And I think, you know, Jess has done a lot of work with Mattel around creating dolls and toys that really any child can grow with. And what I think is beautiful is that all of this just reinforces that we are creating a world of individuals, right? We are not creating like sons and daughters or like brothers and sisters. We are creating just so many different types of individuals, and that within these sort of binaries, which we have grown up to expect or to understand, even within those conversations, there's so much nuance, and there's so much room for, you know, masculinity and femininity to present in so many different ways. And that it can be, you know, it doesn't have to be sort of one extreme or another, but that every single person is an individual with a different ratio and a different little mosaic of all these things that they like and that they're into. And holding space for that and encouraging that, I think, is really beautiful. I do that with my friends and with my family and with my fans on the internet. So why would I not do that with this person that I'm going to sort of raise in the future? That's so empowering.
So speaking of that then, Debbie, you know, we have spoken about that you hope that that might happen, that you may be able to have, you know, a biological baby. So are there things, because again, like I said, our upbringings were completely different, and I think you've had this real, my goodness, like you've been thrown into this world that to me would be very intimidating in many ways, and what you've kind of had to experience at a young age, has that made you reconsider how you would bring your child up? If there are things that you would try and protect your child from, or things that you've learned and that you would love them to see?
Yeah. It's so, I mean, it's so complicated. I would say I'm very hopeful for the world. I know that this is not currently my season, and I know that it will. I really believe that it's going to come, and when it's going to come, it's going to be so right. And I think it's so helpful and wonderful to have these conversations where I can just gather as much intel as possible from people like you guys, who I really admire, about sort of shaping and, you know, lives and identities. And I would say, you know, when it comes about for me and my husband, the thing that I'm really looking forward to that I got to experience from my sort of unconventional life. Before even I was a professional actor, I moved around a lot growing up, and we lived in Germany, and we moved around, we went to different schools and had different hobbies. And I think travel and experiencing different cultures was the greatest gift that my parents could ever give me. And it wasn't easy to really create and solidify a home base in the midst of that. But that is something that I certainly would love to provide for my child as a luxury. I just think the more that we can see and understand that different people have different reference points, perspectives, cultures, that creates that empathy, right? That creates that ability to see people as individuals and put them less in really limited boxes. So that's something I'm really grateful for and hope to provide, and something that I would want to maybe protect them from. I think that there's a lot of conversations now about like celebrity kids and the fact that these children didn't choose this life, and the gift that you can give them, because there was already so much that enters the room before them, in terms of a last name or a parent that people have an idea of, and I think it's already hard enough for the rest of us to create an identity without this sort of thing to have to see around. So the biggest thing I would want to protect for them is just for them to be able to carve out their own thing, whether that's, their interests or things they like or their name. I don't think I want to do too much in the way of putting them out there in a way that they can't feel that they can evolve sort of privately from a place of knowing themselves. And, I think Karin Brar and Peyton List and I had a conversation last week on Facebook Audio about just the idea of like sort of being thrust into public visibility before you even know who you are, and people being like, answer this question about yourself, and then being held to that. So, and that's something I chose, so for my child, my future child who won't have chosen that, hopefully there will be both laws in place and systems in place to protect them from being photographed or being sort of shared and seen. I know my husband, one of the things that I love so much about him is that he's a really well-rounded person with great discipline and a great work ethic. And he knew who he was before he became a public-facing person. And something he's really grateful for is the fact that he could work at a pizza shop and could mow lawns and did work at Guitar Center and all these things. And that sort of privacy to do that while he was growing, I would love to afford for my child in any way that I can. So, yeah, while still giving them the truth of what their experience is. I'm sure that when it happens, the same way that I try to navigate it for my friends as well, like I want to allow them to exist in their own identity, but part of me is just like, oh, if I can help give you an edge up with some access that I have, why would I not do that? And so it's a weird balance to find. I will definitely be calling you a lot during my season of life.
I'm ready. I've been taking notes, so don't worry.
I'm ready. I'm ready too to assume the auntie-hood. Here's what I would think too that you're both are bringing up that I think is brilliant to put like a full circle on this convo is that, you're talking about this openness, Iskra, and this like listening, Debbie, of like letting these kids, letting people define their journey a bit. And I think that's what is called for right now in all of our lives is this like opportunity to listen and be curious about other people.
Wow.
And about, who we're becoming and how we're becoming it. I think we lose that sometimes in the pressure to feel like we must know everything at all times. And that's where the vulnerability comes in, right? It's like, we have to be able to figure these things out. That's part of our growth too. And you guys just said that so beautifully. I hope anybody listening can really take away, whether you're a parent or not, the generosity of that is really beautiful.
Thanks. I
appreciate that.
Something that I love, Jess, you really opened my eyes to the concept of the dream gap and how it affects all of these generations of people. And it's the thing I think about is, how can people, human beings of all ages, of all backgrounds, of all desires and cultures and levels of privilege, how can we dream of something, if we can't first see it? And if we can't first have some reference point, some sort of North Star to at least go in the direction of. And so for people to have role models like you guys and the
Mm.
guidance that you guys are sharing. It's a real gift, and I feel lucky to have you guys, you women, in my life like this. And yeah, I definitely think just the idea of being able to dream and be curious about both who we are and where we're going and how to build that. Something that I find is, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up and hearts in the Facebook audio room, and I'm seeing that a lot of people are really responding well to this. And I know a conversation that we have. I have a podcast called There You Are, and something that people reach out about a lot on the podcast is it's identity. It's like that thing that we were talking about earlier of like, how do you know who you are and what you want to dream about? And I have friends who are in their 20s and in their 30s and in their 40s, and they're pivoting, and they feel sort of a guilt and shame, feeling like, oh, these people have it all figured out. These people know who they are and what they want to do. And I just keep feeling so encouraged that it is never too late, and that we can all at any point choose to be curious to ourselves and to our souls and to what makes the world better and our own little corners better and our relationships and conversations better, and then allow those to guide us.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's literally what I'm building this new education course about, Debbie, is that is having the framework to know that you will always be pivoting in life, even when you've achieved the things you think you want to achieve. That's the point of life. It's to live it. And I just think that's so beautiful that you emphasize that, because this is what I call the work of the work. This is the work of being human. And no matter who you are or where you are, this is the work. And I think the more we can be honest about that, the better. So thank you for even hosting this kind of convo and space for people to be reminded that they already have the answers. It is a lot about refining vision and values, but you all have it inside. Everybody has it inside of them.
Yeah, well, I think so. I've just found myself so inspired by that. And these courses, if you guys who are listening would like some tools on vision and value, you can go to jessweiner.com. You can sign up for The Good Life. Her courses are amazing. Her wisdom is just evergreen, and it's so thoughtful. And yeah, I agree. I think that everyone just deserves, you guys deserve to live your life to the fullest. You guys are capable of so much, and we believe in you. We're excited to watch you guys thrive.
Yes.
So I just want to wrap things up by asking, what are you both grateful for?
I mean, there's that list changes every day, but also I guess the main thing remains of community, in the sense of I'm realizing now community doesn't have to be this huge thing. Community is just coming together, even with your partner, with your family, with loved ones, but it's just that feeling of not being alone, because I've sat with what lonely feels like. And lonely can feel like being in the most crowded room, but unsure if anyone actually sees you. So I think when you find community, that's when people just see you and they value you and they appreciate you. And like I said, that could be just one person, or it could be yourself figuring out like, okay, what does community mean to me? How do I feel less alone when I'm going through things? So I think I've just been at this season in my life so grateful for community, because I've built out communities that help me support me when I'm feeling lonely, or I'm feeling lost, or I'm feeling like I don't know how to shift. Because as we're talking about, life and our different shifts and our different pivots, you can build out those communities. You can find those people who are going to help you at those different phases in life. And I've definitely had distance from certain groups of people. And, you have to find the people that are going to enlighten you and uplift you through those different shifts, and be open to that. So I'm really grateful for community right now. There is a million and one things I'm grateful for, but I think that that's something that currently has meant a lot to me and really helped me through, especially during a pandemic. I moved to a new city. I had a baby. It was a pandemic. There was definitely a lot of feelings of refinding myself, refinding who I am, where, what are my new values? Where am I getting my worth from now? If my worth system was built in, a city like New York, and going to events and being seen and getting magazine covers or whatever it might have been, like unloading those different kind of factors that were really superficial, but at the same time, I can't deny there was definitely certain elements that helped me build my sense of worth, that I was doing things, that I was, relevant or whatever it might be. And now, in my house 24/7 in a new city, without that safety, without that support, and the community was there, and I found it and I built it, and it's really beautiful.
Wow.
Amazing.
It's powerful.
I'm grateful for so many things, but I think it would be remiss for me to not say health is at the top of my gratitude list. I mean, I think if anything, all of us who are, and we're still currently living in a pandemic, it's not over yet. It has brought forward the vision of, why health is so important for me, and not just physical health, but my mental health. I upped my therapy to 3 times a week during the pandemic. And during when we were really on lockdown in 2020. So I've had almost a year of really, and this is thank you insurance and thank you abundance, right? I'm able to afford that, which I know is a gift. But I have to say the prioritization of mental health during this time has really helped me to navigate all these pivots and shifts that we would normally be having as human beings. But now we're just doing it up against these extraordinary circumstances. I lost family members to COVID. It is a really still a treacherous space to be in. And so I think health is at the top of my gratitude list. And that means all of it, including this new conversation we're having, thanks to Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka and other brave young women talking about mental wellness being the most important and equal to physical wellness. So I'm in that camp, Deb, about that.
Yeah.
Huge. Absolutely. Yeah. I echo those, and am doubling down on my gratitude for both community and health and the ways that looks. And I'm grateful for you guys and your vulnerability, your empathy, your loveliness, and sharing of your wisdom. I know that, when you are sort of thrust into so much and forced to find ways to cope and ways to figure it out and ways to deal, I know that some people have a tendency to feel, I earned these lessons myself, so I'm going to keep them to myself and let everyone else earn them themselves. And to be able to use them as stepping stones for other people and say, here you go, let me boost you up. I had to, build this little ladder, but now you're welcome on it. And hopefully it allows you to sort of get higher and higher, and it allows us all to climb. I think that's so gorgeous. And you guys are stone cold foxes in your souls. I love you so much. You guys can find both of these women on their Facebooks are linked here, but their Instagrams are at Iskra, Iskra, and at I'm Jess Weiner. You can find my podcast at There You Are Pod on Instagram, and There You Are is my podcast. You can find it wherever you guys listen to podcasts. Thank you guys so much for coming and for being so honest and open and wise with everyone. I adore you both.
Thank you. We adore you too, my loves. Love you both.
Yes. And thank you everyone for giving me your time today to tune in.
Yeah. Thank you everybody for listening. Let's do this again.
Thanks for your time. Yes. Check back in RSVP. I'll do more Facebook audio rooms. And in the meantime, I'll talk to you guys soon.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.